Did you know that modern-day Iran was the setting for some of the most memorable stories in the Bible? This may seem like a surprise to many, especially considering the political and religious tensions that surround the region today. However, it is a fact that is widely documented in both scripture and historical records that significant parts of the biblical narrative took place in lands that are now part of Iran. This land, before receiving the modern name Iran, was known for its powerful empires, Persia, Media, and Elam, ancient civilizations that played central roles in the history of the Middle East. These kingdoms not only shaped the geopolitical destinies of their time, but were also the scene of divine acts, prophetic visions, and great deliverances that directly impacted God's people. And most fascinatingly, some of the most important characters in the Bible lived, prophesied, or made historical decisions precisely in these regions. In this study, we will explore three major biblical stories that unfolded in the territory of present-day Iran, revealing how this region was the scene of decisions that profoundly influenced the history of Israel, the Jewish faith, and God's redemptive plan. One of the most powerful stories in the Bible begins with the figure of a king who was not even Jewish. We are talking about Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire. Cyrus was born in Anzum, a city on the Iranian plateau, located in the southwest of present-day Iran. He is remembered by both historians and the Bible as one of the most just and visionary kings of antiquity. In 539 BC, Cyrus conquered Babylon, ending Chaldean rule and ushering in a new era of imperial policy. Unlike the Babylonians, who deported and enslaved conquered peoples, Cyrus instituted a policy of return and reconstruction. He allowed exiles to return to their homelands and rebuild their temples and cities. This approach earned him international admiration and, according to the Bible, was used by God to fulfill his promises. The book of Ezra records that Cyrus, in the first year of his reign, issued a decree ordering the rebuilding of the Lord's temple in Jerusalem. This act marks the beginning of the return of the Jews from the Babylonian exile, one of the most significant moments in Jewish history. Even more striking is the fact that Cyrus is called by God "my anointed" in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 45:2-1, a title most often reserved for Israelite kings. But the story does not end there. Years later, during the reign of Darius I, there was resistance to the rebuilding of the temple. Some Persian officials questioned the legitimacy of the work, and an investigation was launched. Darius ordered that the imperial records be examined in search of evidence to support the authorization given by Cyrus. It was then that a document was discovered in Ecbatana, a fortified city in the province of Media. This place, according to many scholars, was the famous Ecbatana, one of the capitals of the Persian Empire. Located in the present-day Iranian city of Hamadan, about 400 kilometers from Tehran. This scroll confirmed that Cyrus' decree really existed and authorized, with full rights, the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. In addition, the text determined that the costs of the work were to be paid by the king's household, and that the temple utensils taken by Nebuchadnezzar were to be returned. The fact that Ecbatana was chosen as the safekeeping location for such an important document indicates its administrative and political importance within the empire. Although it is not known for sure whether the decree was written there or simply stored, what is important is that this Iranian city was key to the continuation of the work of restoring the Jewish people. The second major story we'll highlight takes place in a city mentioned repeatedly in the Bible, Susa, also called Susa. It's located in the southwest of present-day Iran. Susa was one of the royal capitals of the Persian Empire, often used as a winter residence by kings due to its more pleasant climate. It is in this city that the entire narrative of the book of Esther unfolds. It's one of the most dramatic and symbolic in the Bible. According to the sacred text, Hadassah, a young Jewish woman who came to be called Esther, was chosen from among many young women in the empire to become queen, replacing Vashti, who had been deposed for disobedience. The king in question is Ahasuerus, identified by many scholars as Xerxes I. The story of Esther, however, takes a serious turn when Haman, a high-ranking official in the kingdom, devises a plan to exterminate all the Jews in the empire, unaware that the queen herself belonged to that people. Guided by her cousin Mordecai, Esther takes the risk of appearing before the king uninvited, a crime that, according to Persian law, could be punishable by death. After 3 days of fasting and prayer, she enters the king's presence, is received with grace, and then reveals her identity and exposes Haman's plot. The evil plan is foiled, Haman is executed, and the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. This great deliverance, which took place in the heart of Persian territory, led to the institution of the Feast of Purim, celebrated to this day by Jews as a memorial of the salvation provided by God. Interestingly, the book of Esther does not explicitly mention God's name, but his sovereign and silent action is evident in every step of the narrative. In addition to its spiritual value, this story also reinforces the idea that even in foreign lands, far from the temple and the worship system, God acts through faithful people, strategically positioned in the right place at the right time. The third biblical story with a strong connection to present-day Iran is that of Nehemiah, a Jew who served as cupbearer to King Artaxerxes I. Nehemiah's story also begins in the city of Susa, confirming the political weight of this city as a center of imperial decisions. The book of Nehemiah relates that, in the month of Chislev, between November and December, in the 20th year of the reign of Artaxerxes, Nehemiah heard distressing reports. The walls of Jerusalem were still destroyed, leaving the city vulnerable, even after the return of some of the exiles. Nehemiah was deeply moved. He wept, fasted, prayed, and after seeking divine guidance, he summoned the courage to speak to the king. The sovereign noticed his sadness and asked the reason. Nehemiah then made his request. He wanted to return to Jerusalem to lead the rebuilding of the walls. Artaxerxes not only authorized the mission, but also provided Nehemiah with official letters, resources, and an escort for the journey. The king's trust shows that Nehemiah was a man of integrity, strategic thinking, and spiritual sensitivity, qualities that made him an exemplary leader. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, Nehemiah faced opposition, external threats, and internal problems. But with courage, leadership, and faith, he mobilized the people and rebuilt the walls in record time. His work is an example of how God can use ordinary people in public office for great spiritual purposes. In addition to the 3 central stories that relate to Ecbatana and Susa, other cities located in the territory of present-day Iran are mentioned in apocryphal or deuterocanonical books, especially accepted by Catholics and Orthodox. In the Book of Tobit, for example, the city of Rages appears in the province of Media in northern Iran. There lived a man named Gabel, who kept a sum of silver belonging to Tobias's father. Tobias's wife Sarah is also mentioned as living in Ecbatana, which reinforces the importance of that city in the Jewish context of the diaspora. Another example is the second book of Maccabees, which relates that King Antiochus IV, Epiphanes of the Seleucid dynasty, attempted to plunder the temple at Persepolis, the ancient ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, located in present-day southern Iran, in the province of Fars. Today, Persepolis is home to monumental archaeological ruins that confirm its role as one of the most splendid centers of antiquity. Even after the end of the official exile, many Jews remained in Persian lands. For centuries, they maintained synagogues, schools of scripture study, and a strong cultural identity. Numerous historical, literary, and archaeological records point to a thriving and well-integrated Jewish community in the various empires that succeeded. Persian rule, including the Parthians and Sassanids. This legacy shows that God's presence is not limited by geography. At a time when the temple had been destroyed, the Jewish faith flourished even on foreign soil, demonstrating that the people's faithfulness to God and God's faithfulness to his people do not depend on borders. What about you? Did you know that so many biblical stories took place in regions that are now part of Iran? Leave your opinion in the comments or share this content with someone who loves biblical history and archaeology.